I never thought I'd be the type of woman who would approach a man like Park Min-jun, but there I was, hands trembling around my leather briefcase, heart hammering against my ribs, watching the most dangerous man in Busan from across the peninsula hotel lounge. 5 weeks until Dae-jung's wedding, and the invitation sat in my apartment like a loaded gun. Cream-colored paper, embossed gold Hangul characters spelling out my humiliation in the most elegant font money could buy. You are cordially invited to witness the union of Lee Dae-jung and Choi Ji-won. They wanted me there, wanted me to see him marry the daughter of a National Assembly member, wanted everyone to witness what happened to American women who thought they could belong in Korean political dynasties. The man across the lounge looked like controlled violence in an expensive suit, Park Min-jun. Everyone in Busan knew the name, even if they pretended not to. Everyone knew what he was, what he controlled, what he was capable of. I'd been watching him for 20 minutes, building courage, rehearsing my insane request. What kind of desperate fool asks a mafia boss to pretend to be her boyfriend? 8 months ago, the cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom along Gwangali Beach when Dae-jung destroyed me. He chose the beachfront cafe where we'd shared our first kiss, that perfect spot overlooking the water where I'd once believed in us. Public enough that I couldn't make a scene, private enough for him to deliver his rehearsed humiliation without witnesses. "We've grown in different directions," he said, his voice gentle, practiced. "My family has expectations I can't ignore. Ji-won understands the world I come from in ways you never could." The words he didn't say hung between us like smoke. "You're black. You're American. You'll always be foreign. My family will never accept you, and I don't have the courage to choose you over them." 3 years. 3 years of his mother's comments about my exotic appearance, said with a smile that never reached her eyes. 3 years of being introduced at political functions without mention of my career, as if I were merely decorative. 3 years of family dinners conducted in rapid-fire Korean, deliberately excluding me despite my intermediate proficiency, despite the hours I'd spent studying to belong in their world. I still hear his father's voice. Do they have lawyers in America? Real ones? The dismissal was casual, crushing. But nothing compared to that dinner 6 months before the end. Dae-jung's mother had looked directly at me, then asked her son in Korean, "When will you finish this experiment and marry properly?" I understood every word, and I'd waited, breath held, heart suspended, for Dae-jung to defend me. He said nothing, absolutely nothing, just reached for his wine glass and changed the subject. That's when I knew. I would always be the experiment, the phase, the embarrassment he tolerated privately but could never defend publicly. The irony burned. I'd just made a junior partner at one of Seoul's most prestigious international law firms. I could negotiate billion-won contracts in flawless Korean legal terminology. Judges respected me, opposing counsel feared me, but I still wasn't enough for a man who claimed to love me. 8 months later, the invitation arrived by courier. Cream-colored paper, embossed gold Hangul, excessive formality that made the insult worse. You are cordially invited to witness the union of Lee Dae-jung and Choi Ji-won. I stared at that envelope for 3 days, couldn't open it, didn't need to. I knew what it meant. He was marrying the daughter of a National Assembly member, someone whose family name opened doors, someone Korean enough, someone worthy. When I finally tore it open, I laughed until I couldn't breathe, or maybe I cried. The boundaries between rage and grief had long since blurred into something darker, something that tasted like ash and felt like drowning. They wanted me there, wanted me to witness his triumph, wanted everyone to see what happened to American women who thought they could belong in Korean political dynasties. That's when I decided, if they wanted a show, I'd give them one they'd never forget. I spent 3 days researching Park Min-jun before I worked up the courage to approach him. Officially, he was a luxury hotel magnate with entertainment venues across Southeast Asia, a legitimate businessman with an impeccable suit and a reputation for closing impossible deals. Unofficially, everyone in Busan knew the truth. He controlled half the city's underground economy with an iron fist wrapped in expensive Italian leather. The stories painted a consistent picture, ruthless but honorable by his own code. He didn't harm innocents, he punished betrayal absolutely. He'd risen from poverty with no family connections, building his empire through intelligence and an unsettling ability to read people like open books, which made what I was about to do either brilliant or suicidal. The Peninsula Hotel Lounge was neutral territory, sophisticated enough for my profession, dangerous enough for his. I found him in a private corner, laptop open, the air around him somehow different from everyone else's. Controlled power, quiet menace in a tailored suit. Every eye in that lounge followed me as I crossed the marble floor, the striking black woman in the red blazer walking straight toward Park Min-jun's table. I gripped my briefcase like a lifeline, heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. "Mr. Park?" I began, and my voice cracked. "My name is Harriet Williams. I have a business proposal." He looked up, and those dark eyes missed nothing. I stammered through my pitch, offering money I couldn't afford, explaining my pathetic situation in halting sentences. The humiliation burned my throat, but I kept talking. When desperation meets pride, pride rarely survives. "Attorney Williams," he said quietly, and I froze. "I know who you are. I've seen you in court. Impressive cross-examination technique." His voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely confident, not mocking, curious. "Tell me why you're really going to this wedding." The question cracked something open inside me. I wanted to feed him polite lies about closure and moving on. Instead, the truth came pouring out like poison from a wound. "I want Dae-jung to see that leaving me didn't destroy me, even though some days it felt like it did." The words tasted bitter. "I want to walk in there with someone so powerful that his family's opinions become irrelevant. I want him to question, even for a moment, if he made the right choice." My voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I want to stop feeling like I'm not enough because I was born with the wrong face in the wrong country." The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. 3 years invested, and all I had to show for it was burning shame and this desperate gambit. Min-jun studied me for a long moment. Then he closed his laptop. "I'll do it." Shock rendered me speechless. Finally, "Why? What do you want from me?" His expression didn't change. Perhaps I'm curious to see what happens when someone asks me for help instead of fear. "I'm offering payment. I don't need your money, Attorney Williams, but I will require your complete honesty. No performance between us, even if we're performing for everyone else." I left that hotel with his business card in my trembling hand, our first preparation meeting scheduled, relief and disbelief warring in my chest. That night, I researched deeper. Orphaned at 14, survived Busan's brutal streets. First arrested at 16, charges dropped when witnesses mysteriously disappeared. Built his empire by 28, never married, rarely photographed with women. A reputation for reading people with unsettling accuracy. One question haunted me as I stared at his contact information. What would make a man like Park Min-jun agree to help a desperate stranger? I wouldn't understand the answer until it was far too late to protect my heart. The private dining room at Min-jun's hotel was exactly what I expected. Luxurious in that understated way that screamed wealth, but with an edge that reminded me who I was dealing with. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Busan's glittering harbor, A table set for two that probably cost more than my monthly rent. We got down to business immediately. Our cover story needed to be airtight. Legal consultation regarding property acquisition, Min-jun suggested, pulling out a leather notebook. Plausible, professional, explains how we met without raising questions. 8 months together, I added, my lawyer's mind already calculating angles. Serious enough to attend a wedding, not so long that people wonder about engagement. Why we work, he looked at me directly. Mutual respect, intellectual compatibility, shared outsider status. I nodded, scribbling notes, trying to ignore how his gaze made my skin feel too tight. Then he said something that stopped my pen mid-sentence. Your argument regarding bilateral investment treaties was compelling. You made 3 senior partners look unprepared. I looked up sharply. What? The International Trade Law Symposium, 6 months ago. You presented on cross-border contract enforcement. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. I was there on business. I stayed for your entire presentation. The realization hit me like cold water. He's been paying attention to me for months. Why didn't you... I started, then stopped. Why would Park Min-jun introduce himself to a random lawyer at a conference? We established our boundaries with the same clinical precision I used for contracts. In public, we'd appear as an authentic couple. In private, we'd maintain professional distance. Duration? Through the wedding and a reasonable aftermath. Exit strategy? A mutual, amicable breakup that would let us both save face. It should have felt cold, transactional. Instead, the air between us felt charged with something I couldn't name. 5 years ago, Min-jun said suddenly, his voice quieter, I attended my first love's wedding. Alone. She married a chaebol heir, 3rd-generation wealth, the kind of pedigree I could never match. I set down my pen, caught off guard by the confession. Her family made it clear I was street trash, playing above my station. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I told myself I was being mature, showing I'd moved on. In reality, I gave her the satisfaction of seeing me isolated while she celebrated her advantageous match. His eyes met mine, and I saw my own pain reflected there. Don't mistake my help for charity, Attorney Williams. I recognize the pain of being judged for your origin rather than your character. Anger surged through me, hot and unexpected. Anger that even with his power and wealth, he couldn't escape the same judgments that destroyed my relationship. Anger at a world where people like Dae-jung could discard people for better connections. Anger at myself for still caring enough to create this elaborate charade. They never see us, do they? Just what we lack, what we can never be. No, they don't. Something shifted in that moment. We weren't just 2 people arranging a business transaction. We were wounded warriors recognizing each other across a battlefield, understanding that our carefully constructed armor of success couldn't fully protect us from the cuts that came from being deemed unworthy. The arrangement was no longer purely transactional. It had become something more dangerous, a mutual understanding between 2 people who knew exactly what it cost to be judged by your origins instead of your achievements. I should have recognized the risk then, should have seen that shared pain could become something else. But I was too angry, too hurt, too desperate to prove my worth to notice I was already falling. Over 2 weeks, our meetings evolved from scripted rehearsals to something I hadn't anticipated, actual conversation. We met at upscale restaurants where Min-jun's presence commanded the best tables without asking. His hotel office, all glass and steel overlooking the harbor. Eventually, his private penthouse, minimalist, expensive, surprisingly devoid of the ostentatious displays of wealth I'd expected. He taught me how Korean society really worked. Not the official hierarchies I'd studied, but the hidden networks of loyalty, leverage, and obligation that determined who held actual power. family connections that stretched back generations, favors owed and collected like currency, the invisible architecture of influence that no amount of professional success could penetrate if you weren't born into it. I explained the racism I navigated daily, the microaggressions so small they were deniable, so constant they were devastating, the way store clerks followed me, the surprised comments when I spoke Korean, the assumptions about my intelligence, my competence, my right to be in spaces I'd earned access to. At our third meeting over wine neither of us was really drinking, the wounds got deeper. His mother said it right in front of me, I heard myself say, in Korean, assuming I wouldn't fully understand. When will you finish this phase and marry a proper Korean girl? You're embarrassing your father in political circles. My fingers tightened around the wine glass. But I understood every word, and I waited for Dae-jung to defend me, to say something, anything. He didn't, Min-jun said, not a question. He said nothing. The memory still had teeth. That's when I knew I would always be the embarrassment he tolerated privately but couldn't defend publicly. Min-jun was quiet for a long moment. Then, I grew up in Gamshan, you know it? The hillside district, colorful houses? Poverty, he corrected quietly. Marginalized, forgotten. I built my first business at 19, gray market electronics, barely legal, mostly desperate. He refilled my wine with steady hands. The same families who now court my business, right? They had me beaten by private security when I was 22 for trespassing in their neighborhood. I was delivering a package. Min-jun. Her name was Yoon Mi-sun, wealthy family, old money. She genuinely loved me. I believed that mattered. I already knew how this story ended. Her family gave her an ultimatum. Choose your family legacy or this boy. She chose legacy. He met my eyes. Success didn't change their perception. It only changed their calculation of what I was worth to them. Something shifted between us then. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. We were kindred spirits wearing different armor against the same wounds. By our fourth meeting, the pretense had worn thin. Min-jun asked detailed questions about a complex case I was handling: Korean-American trade disputes, territorial jurisdiction issues, enforcement complications. Not polite interest, substantive inquiry that revealed he actually understood the nuances. Have you considered arguing concurrent jurisdiction? He asked. Your client maintains operations in both countries. That's leverage. I blinked. That's actually brilliant. You're different than I expected, I admitted later, the wine finally loosening my professional guard. How so? Most powerful men talk at you, not with you. You ask questions and actually listen to the answers. His response was immediate. Most powerful people didn't grow up being invisible. When you've experienced being ignored, you're less inclined to inflict it on others. The statement hit me with physical force. How many times had Dae-jung talked over me in meetings with his colleagues, dismissed my concerns as oversensitivity, made me feel like an accessory to his life rather than a partner in it. I didn't feel visible by Dae-jung, I said, the realization painful in its clarity. Not intentionally maybe, but consistently. Min-jun simply nodded. No platitudes, no dismissal, just recognition of a truth that still had the power to hurt me. And somehow, that quiet understanding meant more than any comfort could have. The final rehearsal dinner took place at an exclusive restaurant carved into the cliffs overlooking the ocean. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the East Sea stretched endlessly, dark water meeting darker sky. We'd been practicing our choreography for 2 weeks now, and it had become disturbingly natural. Min-jun's hand at the small of my back as we entered, familiar, protective, sending heat through the silk of my dress. My body angling toward his when he spoke, like a plant seeking sunlight. The inside jokes we'd developed, surprising bursts of genuine humor that made me forget we were supposed to be acting. He poured my wine before his own, a small gesture of consideration that felt anything but calculated. Dae-jung's mother will come for you, I warned, watching candlelight flicker across his features. She'll ask invasive questions about your family, your background. It's her way of establishing that you don't belong either, despite everything you've built. I took a breath. She'll be vicious. She considers me a stain on her son's reputation. You're just collateral damage in her mission to humiliate me. And what would you like me to say? His voice was calm, unbothered. The answer surprised me even as I spoke it. The truth, that you built everything yourself from nothing. That should shut her up more effectively than trying to impress her. Min-jun smiled, really smiled, for the first time since I'd known him. The transformation was devastating. You don't want me to pretend to be something I'm not. Isn't that exactly what I'm asking? Pretend to be my boyfriend? There's a difference between playing a role and changing your identity. His eyes held mine, dark and unwavering. Don't let them make you ashamed of who you are, Harriet. You've built something real in this country. There's more honor in that than inherited privilege. I felt exposed, like he'd seen straight through to the core insecurity I'd wrapped in professional achievements and designer clothes. My defense mechanisms kicked in automatically. Easy for you to say. You're successful by anyone's definition. Now I am, he acknowledged, but I remember what it felt like before, being judged not for my ideas or character, but for where I came from, for the accent I couldn't quite polish away, for the hunger that never fully leaves your eyes when you've known real poverty. His gaze remained steady, unflinching. Your ex didn't leave you because you weren't good enough. He left because he wasn't strong enough to recognize your value. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But 3 years of Dae-jung's family had done their work well, carving doubt into my bones like water wearing away stone. Then, Min-jun did something that changed everything. He reached across the table and took my hand. Not a performance. We were alone, no audience to convince, no one watching. Just his fingers threading through mine, warm and steady and real. Tomorrow, we show them exactly what they lost, he said quietly. And for the first time since Dae-jung had walked away, I felt something other than pain cracking through my chest. Something dangerous and fragile and utterly terrifying. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. I should have pulled my hand away, should have reminded us both that this was temporary, transactional, built on mutual wounds rather than genuine affection. Instead, I held on and pretended I didn't notice that neither of us was pretending anymore. I spent 4 hours getting ready, and each brush of makeup felt like another layer of armor between my skin and the world. My dress was deep burgundy, a bold choice, but I was done hiding. Elegant without trying too hard, it had cost 2 months' salary and represented the 15th option after discarding all the others for sending the wrong message. This dress said exactly what I needed it to say. I'm thriving without you. When Min-jun arrived at my apartment, the sight of him knocked the air from my lungs. Perfectly tailored charcoal suit, burgundy pocket square that matched my dress, though we'd never discussed coordinating. This wasn't the composed businessman from our preparation meetings. This was controlled power wrapped in elegant menace. And for a dangerous moment, I forgot this was all pretend. Forgot that a man like Park Min-jun wouldn't actually choose someone like me. You look beautiful, he said simply. The words shouldn't have affected me. They were part of our scripts, the necessary compliments from fake boyfriend to fake girlfriend. But something in his eyes when he said it made me believe, just for a second, that he meant it. The drive to Seoul stretched 3 hours, and my stomach twisted tighter with each passing kilometer. Self-doubt crept in like cold water. What am I doing? What do I possibly hope to accomplish with this charade? We can still turn around, Min-jun said quietly, reading my thoughts with that unsettling accuracy of his. You don't owe him your presence. I owe myself this, I replied, the words steadier than I felt. I need to show them I survived. The memory hit me sharp and bitter. The day after Dae-jung left, I'd called in sick for the first time in my career, lay in bed staring at the ceiling while his words played on repeat. "You'll find someone more suitable for your lifestyle." As if my lifestyle was a choice rather than the reality of being born black in America. As if I were somehow deficient for not fitting perfectly into his carefully constructed world. The Sheila Hotel rose before us like a monument to everything I could never be. Opulent, traditional, sweeping Hanok architecture mixed with modern elegance, traditional orchid arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent, a string quartet playing classical Korean pieces, Dae-jung's world on full display, old money, political connections, everything I could never truly enter no matter how hard I tried. Min-jun's hand found the small of my back, warm and steady and grounding. "Remember, we're the most interesting people here. Act like it." We moved through the pre-ceremony reception like we owned it. Min-jun played his role with devastating perfection. Attentive but not possessive, powerful but not boastful, clearly enamored with me in a way that seemed genuine even to my skeptical eyes. I caught the whispers trailing behind us like smoke, the stunned glances, the rapid recalculations happening in real time as Dae-jung's family and friends tried to reconcile their image of me, the foreign girlfriend who wasn't quite good enough, with the woman confidently holding Park Min-jun's arm. Everyone knew who he was, what he represented. The scandal factor of my bringing him was a power move they'd never anticipated. I wasn't hiding anymore, wasn't shrinking to make them comfortable. I was claiming space in a world that had tried to erase me. And for the first time in 8 months, I felt something other than shame burning in my chest. I felt dangerous. Dae-jung found me just before the ceremony, his approach too calculated to be coincidence. Ji-won clung to his arm, everything I wasn't. Delicate, pale Korean beauty in an impeccable hanbok-inspired designer gown. Daughter of a National Assembly member, a family name that opened doors I could never even knock on. "Harriet, you came," Dae-jung said with forced casualness. "I wasn't sure you would." His eyes flicked to Min-jun, and shock rippled across his carefully composed face. "I didn't realize you were bringing a guest." 3 years together, reduced to this, an afterthought. Min-jun extended his hand smoothly. "Park Min-jun, congratulations on your wedding." I watched recognition dawn in Dae-jung's expression. Park Min-jun was hardly a low-profile figure in Korean business circles, or any circles for that matter. "You're together?" The question was directed at me, but Dae-jung's eyes remained fixed on Min-jun. The subtext was clear. "How did you possibly?" 8 months now, I managed, finding my voice. We met through a legal consultation for his hotels. Ji-won's smile was all practiced perfection. "How wonderful. Dae-jung mentioned you work in corporate law. I'm sure that's fulfilling." The condescension was achingly familiar. How many times had his family made similar comments about my little career? Before I could respond, Min-jun spoke. "Harriet's work on the Samsung-Hyundai merger last year was remarkable. The contract terms she negotiated saved her firm's client approximately 2 billion won, a fact I'd mentioned only in passing during one of our dinners. He'd been listening, remembering, valuing. Dae-jung looked between us, something unreadable flickering in his expression. Not jealousy exactly, but perhaps the first inkling that his narrative, the American girlfriend he'd outgrown, might need revision. During cocktail hour, Dae-jung's mother found us with the inevitability of a predator finding prey. "Harriet, I'm surprised you came." Her tone suggested my presence was inappropriate despite the invitation she personally approved. The subtle Korean way of saying, "You don't belong here." "I wouldn't miss Dae-jung's happy day," I replied, the words tasting like ash. "Mrs. Lee, this is Park Min-jun." Her eyes widened slightly, the only crack in her perfect composure. "The Park Min-jun. How unexpected." Your son and I share an appreciation for fine things, Mrs. Lee, Min-jun said smoothly, though I believe I value Harriet's expertise in international law more fully than he did. The barb wasn't lost on her. Her smile tightened as she deployed her typical strategy. And your family, Mr. Park? Are they here today? Her way of placing people in her mental hierarchy. I tensed despite our preparation. Min-jun's response was unflinchingly calm. I'm afraid I'm an orphan, Mrs. Lee. Grew up in Gamcheon village. But I've built something I'm proud of. Hotels across Asia. Legitimate businesses employing thousands. I've learned that character matters more than pedigree, though I understand not everyone shares that view. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. Not embarrassment, not defensiveness, just honest pride. Mrs. Lee struggled visibly. How industrious. The word dripped with condescension. Something snapped inside me. Min-jun is being modest. His company revolutionized luxury hospitality in Southeast Asia. Unlike some people, he values what I've built in Korea rather than seeing it as a temporary hobby. A direct challenge to years of her dismissing my career. Mrs. Lee's smile became knife-thin. Indeed. She retreated without conceding, but something had shifted. I'd stood my ground. Later, Min-jun led me to the dance floor without asking, just extended his hand. His palm at my waist felt like an anchor. They're all watching, he murmured at my ear. Show them your smile, the real one, not the polite one you've been wearing. I don't think I remember how. Then I'll remind you. He whispered something about Ji-won's overdone makeup that made heat rise to my cheeks. Not the words themselves, but the intimacy. For the first time all day, we weren't performing. This moment was just ours. I laughed. Genuine, unexpected, free. Across the room, Dae-jung was watching. He's wondering if he made a mistake, Min-jun observed. Did he? The question escaped before I could stop it, my insecurity bleeding through. Min-jun's eyes found mine, utterly serious. The biggest one of his life. We slipped out to the rooftop garden as evening deepened, Seoul's lights glittering across the city like scattered diamonds. The cool air was a relief after the stifling perfection inside. I leaned against the railing and let the facade drop for the first time all day, my shoulders finally releasing tension I'd been carrying like armor. Thank you, I said simply. You've made this bearable. Is that all you wanted? Min-jun asked, standing beside me but not touching, giving me space I hadn't realized I needed. For it to be bearable? The question cracked something open inside me. I wanted to show them I was fine without him. I wanted to attract someone more successful, more impressive. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Pretty pathetic motivation, isn't it? Human, he corrected quietly. We all want to be valued. I haven't thought about Dae-jung once today, I realized aloud. Not really. I've been too busy. I stopped, unsure how to describe what had been happening between us all day. Too busy not pretending? Min-jun suggested. The accuracy of it startled me. I should be thinking about closure, about moving on. Instead, I'm thinking about how much I've enjoyed being with you, how I don't want this day to end. The truth spilled out unstoppable now, which is ridiculous because this isn't real. You're just doing me a favor. Min-jun turned to face me fully, his expression unreadable in the dim light. I canceled meetings in Hong Kong to be here today. My breath caught. Why would you do that? Because I've been watching you for months. His voice remained steady, matter-of-fact. At legal conferences, at the museum benefit gala, at that trade law symposium, I noticed you before you ever approached me in that hotel. That's not possible, I whispered. The first time I saw you, you were cross-examining a witness in a corporate fraud case. I was there for unrelated business. I stayed for 2 hours watching you work. Your eyes held mine. Your precision, your passion, your refusal to be intimidated. It was captivating. I wanted to introduce myself, but you left with colleagues before I could." He paused. "When you approached me that day, asking me for this favor, I thought perhaps the universe was offering a second chance." "You could have said something," I managed. "Would you have believed me?" His question echoed my own doubts with uncomfortable accuracy. That someone like me could be genuinely interested in someone like you. "No," I admitted. "I would have assumed you had ulterior motives." A small smile touched his lips. "As I assumed when you first approached me. We're both too accustomed to being valued for what we represent, rather than who we are." The realization washed over me like cold water. Our arrangement had never been entirely fake, at least not for him. The attentiveness, the interest, the protection, not all performance. "What happens tomorrow?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "When the pretending is supposed to stop?" Min-jun took a careful step closer. "It depends. Do you want it to stop?" Below us, Seoul glittered like a promise. Behind us, the sounds of the wedding reception faded to background noise. In that moment, standing on that rooftop with this dangerous, complicated man who somehow saw me more clearly than anyone ever had, I made a choice. Not from anger or pain or a desperate need to prove something to anyone else, but for myself. "No," I said, and closed the distance between us. Our first real kiss felt like waking up, away from performance, away from watching eyes, away from everything except this moment. The woman I'd been pretending to be, confident enough, worthy enough to be with someone like Park Min-jun, wasn't pretend at all. She'd been there all along. I just needed someone to see her. 7 months passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. Min-jun attended gallery openings where I consulted, asking thoughtful questions about contemporary Korean artists. He sat in courtroom galleries watching me win cases, pride evident in his eyes. I advised on his hotel expansion projects, my legal expertise finally valued rather than tolerated. We spent quiet evenings at my apartment or his penthouse, just existing together without performance or pretense. The old wounds still surfaced sometimes. I'd catch myself waiting for him to discover I wasn't enough, questioning whether I was Korean enough for his world. The scars Dae-jung left throbbed with remembered pain. But Min-jun was patient with my healing, never pushing, always steady. Meeting his mother terrified me. I spent hours choosing the perfect outfit, rehearsing greetings, bracing for judgment. Instead, I found a warm, straightforward woman who still lived in a modest Gamchan apartment despite her son's wealth. She embraced me without reservation and immediately put me to work helping prepare dinner. "Min-jun told me about your work," she said while we chopped vegetables side by side. "Corporate law, very impressive. I volunteer teaching English to refugee children. They need lawyers who understand being outsiders. Would you speak to them sometime?" No judgment of my race or nationality, just genuine appreciation for who I was. Tears threatened and I blinked them away, unused to such straightforward acceptance. His younger sister told me later, "He's different with you, more himself. He smiles more. Thank you for that." When my parents visited Seoul, I braced for comparisons to Dae-jung, for worry about another heartbreak. Instead, my father talked business with Min-jun without condescension, and my mother treated him like any potential son-in-law. Over dinner, she pulled me aside. "You smile again, baby. Real smiles. Not the ones you wore with that other boy. This man sees you. I can tell." Cherry blossom season brought us full circle to Gwangali Beach, where Dae-jung ended everything. Pink petals swirled around us like snow, transforming painful memories into something beautiful. "I love you," Min-jun said in English, then repeated in Korean, "사랑해줘." "Why tell me in both languages?" I asked. "Because I want to be certain you understand. No misinterpretations, no cultural gaps." His eyes held mine. I love you, not for appearances or what you represent, for who you are. The words I'd longed to hear, but never from Dae-jung. He'd wanted me to be acceptable despite my background. Min-jun valued me completely, my history, my work, my passions, even my insecurities. I love you too, I said, the words no longer frightening. Not because you're Park Min-jun, powerful businessman, but because you're the man who said yes when a stranger asked for help, who saw me clearly when I couldn't see myself. 1 year after Dae-jung's wedding, we held our own ceremony at a private estate overlooking Gwangali Beach. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. My desperate attempt to save face had led me here, to my own wedding on my own terms. We blended traditions, Korean pibek, jumping the broom, Christian and non-denominational elements. Our guests merged our worlds, legal colleagues, business associates, family, friends. My parents glowed with pride. Min-jun's mother shed quiet tears. Dae-jung wasn't invited, not from resentment, but because he belonged to a chapter that needed to end before this one could begin. Min-jun's vows mixed Korean and English. I never believed in fate until you walked into my life. I've built empires, commanded loyalty, accumulated power, but I never found home until I found you. Home isn't a place, it's a person who sees you completely and chooses you anyway. My vows acknowledged our unusual beginning. What began as desperation became the most authentic relationship I've ever known. I asked you to help me prove my worth to others. Instead, you helped me recognize it for myself. You taught me that real connection comes from being fully known, not carefully curated. Years later, when people ask how we met, we tell the truth. I approached him desperate and hurting, asking a dangerous stranger to be my fake date. He said yes for reasons neither of us fully understood. What began as pretense became real. Now I run my own international law firm, representing marginalized communities and foreign workers. Min-jun transitioned his empire almost entirely legitimate. Together, we mentor young people told they don't belong, transforming our pain into purpose. The anger and humiliation that drove me to approach Min-jun have transformed into gratitude. Not for Dae-jung's rejection, but for the courage desperation gave me, for finding someone who values me for exactly who I am. Sometimes our deepest pain leads us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes the most unlikely person becomes the safest place to land. And sometimes saying yes to a dangerous request becomes saying yes to the rest of your life.